Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Tally. This is episode 63, and I'm your host, Brian Tally. The mission and the goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and on Spotify. The online information and handles are all located on the scrolling ticker at the bottom portion of your screen. Be sure to like and share the program as well. You can also support the program by going to Anchor FM or Spotify and clicking the support button. Folks, who out there is a business owner? Who wants exposure? Who wants to be heard? Let me help you advertise your business right here on this podcast. Program sponsorships include a custom written script to advertise your business to its fullest potential. Email me directly at thetallybill@gmail.com and let's set up an impactful advertising plan to help you and your business get the results you're looking for. Again, email me directly at thetallybill@gmail.com. That's thetallybill@gmail.com. And let's get started today. Friends, I am going to have a special podcast today, and this is dedicated to everybody out there who wants to get involved, but they don't know how. I get so many emails. Like I said, I get so many emails every day. I get private messages every day. I get phone calls. And it's a lot. And it's a lot because I answer everyone. I have a binder that's probably that thick, full of emails that I print every single one out to make sure I respond to every single person out there. I help who I can, and if I can't help them, I find them somebody that can. But a lot of the times, I can speak to the people that are reaching out to me in their critical time of need, and I am there for them as a voice of reason to help them through their struggles. Today's podcast is going to be a very simple one, but it's the most commonly asked question. How do I write a bill? How do I write a bill? Well, I don't know. Because when I wrote my bill, I didn't know what to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some real life value. Some real life value that I did that was successful in me having 4 bills introduced in Congress that were written and drafted by myself and a great team I had behind me that supported me throughout this legislative process. So this podcast today is going to be for anybody out there who wants to get involved, or it could be for anybody that just wants to kind of educate themselves on how the process works, on how the legislative process works, and what it takes, the amount of tenacity that it takes to get these bills not only seen and heard, but to get them introduced and passed into law. So what I want to do is I want to start with this. How do I write a bill? This is going to answer so many of the questions that I get from, like I said, hundreds of people a month. It's getting more and more and more every single day, as there's a lot of people out there that are frustrated with the system and they want to make a change, but they just don't know how to do it. So during my process and my greatest time in need, when I needed a member of Congress. I didn't have one because he was indicted on federal charges. So I was left with one of the biggest VA cases in the country with VA medical malpractice with no congressman. So I had to stand up in my greatest time of need, adversity. And I said, we have got to change the law. I was denied rightful compensation for an injury that occurred inside a VA hospital because of a law that was written in 1946 that shields independent contractors from any liability inside the VA hospital. So the U.S. government is not responsible for making any payouts or any settlements for any for any acts of negligence or malpractice that's committed by a independent contractor. But anyways, that's a different story. The mission here is how do I write a bill? How do I write a bill? How do I get started? The first thing I did is I took a pad of paper, took a pad of paper and a pen, and I wrote down everything that went wrong in my case. Everything that went wrong. And then I went back to the law of 1946, so the Federal Tort Claims Act, and I read it. And I compared my notes with what I wrote down compared to what the law was. So I took the law and I started to check everything that was there in place. And then I started to highlight everything that wasn't there in place. So I did a first rough draft of a bill. And that was through a lot of research online, how to draft a bill. I contacted a school teacher. I was put in contact with somebody that has taught kids this in high school. And then I picked up a law book. I was doing a lot of research from my chair. And again, my most critical time in need. So I drafted a bill, and it's right here. This was my original bill that I drafted. It's about 5 pages. And I wrote this as if I was a member of Congress. It is the same form. It is the same format. Everything is as if it was done by a professional staffer who is an attorney, if you will, for a member of Congress. Everything was done to the T. What did I do next? You have to find the purpose, you have to find the passion, and you have to put together a plan. Because if you want to make a change and be heard, you need to be able to work it every single day. Because we all know that the legislative wheels of justice move very, very, very slow. You're dealing with a bureaucratic process that's very tiring and exhausting. So you have got to have a purpose, you have got to have passion, and you have got to have a plan. The next thing you need to do is you need to establish your assets and strategize the outcome before it happens. Establish your assets. That means to find commonalities of people that could get behind your bill, that could get behind this new idea that you have that can make a difference in what you're trying to change. So that requires phone calls, that requires emails, that requires office visits, that requires you to get out there, boots on the ground, to knock on doors, to share this bill draft that you have already put together. So you need to build assets. Assets could be members of Congress. Assets could be the media. Assets could be, a community leader, somebody who has a voice, somebody who has a platform, and to build that relationship with them. Again, to find that commonality to where they can help you get your voice out there, to help you get your bill out there. You need exposure. So you need assets. And once you get those assets, you need to keep them close. And you need to build those relationships and really nurture those relationships, because that's what's going to help you, again, get your idea, get your bill across the finish line. We have always got to identify the problem. Identify the problem. Once you identify the problem, I want you to go and try to find if there's already something out there, right? So, in my case, it was a loophole, in the VA from 1946, and the loophole was very sophisticated and it worked very well for the VA. But I was able to expose this loophole because I looked at the law and I saw how it was written and how bulletproof it was. So then I started to look to see if there was anything else out there that could be relatable to the experience that I had in the VA, and there wasn't. So now I knew I had identified the problem. I had already wrote down all of the solutions. I put it in bill form. I'm creating assets. I'm strategizing the outcomes before they happen. And what does that mean? That means that I forecasted months and months and months down the road on how I thought that this would all play out. Because if you have that reconnaissance, if you will, if you think like a member of Congress, see, in order to be successful, you need to know who you're dealing with, and you need to know their habits, and you need to know how they think, and you need to know how they walk and how they talk and fit into that mold. Once you begin to strategize those outcomes, you can begin to play chess, because that's what this is. This is getting bills through all of these different layers of protection. You say you have a congressman here, and then you have like 9 layers. It's like an onion. And you peel back, each layer will get you closer to having that meeting. Okay, so it takes a lot of time. It's called citizen advocacy, and anyone can do it. As a matter of fact, it is your duty as an American to call out anything that may not be suitable for our country. If you have a solution, step up to the table, write it down, and get it done. Citizen advocacy needs to be done in an honorable way. It needs to be done in an honorable way. And again, you have a voice in this country. So many people feel as if they don't have a voice. Well, you won't have a voice if you do it the wrong way. But that's what this is all about. It's all about building your assets again, and having that purpose and having that passion and having that plan. And if you do it in that order, you will see your plan begin to develop. Again, I had to teach myself this. There was no blueprint for me to follow. And I'm not perfect at this. I'm just giving you what I did. I'm giving you the blueprint that I have created. And folks, I'm not going off notes here. I'm just telling you a story. And I'm sure I'm going to leave a lot of stuff out, but that's fine. Because, maybe I'll touch on it later. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I'm just trying to recount how it all happened, because I think it's important to share. Because I think there's so many people out there that have great ideas, but they just don't know how to package it. They don't know what type of vehicle to put it in. And I hope that this video and this podcast will help you further understand that. The next thing you need to do is create a grassroots coalition. You cannot do it yourself. You need support. You need a team. In my case, I had about 5 people that were fully engaged. And then I had about another 8 people that were in and out, because they have a busy life. They have kids, they got jobs, they got this and that, and they put in some volunteer time when they could. But create that good circle of people you trust, and give them jobs, give them duties. Say, okay, so you're going to take care of calling these 50 members of Congress. You're going to call these 50 members of the Senate. You're going to call these VSOs. You're going to call the VFW. You're going to call the DAV. You're going to call AMVETS. And you over here, you're going to call whatever it is. You're going to call and talk to maybe some of the subcommittees in Congress to see who we can sit down with and get a meeting with. And folks, you've got to understand too, there's 2 ways to do this. You've got your state legislation, you got your state house, right? And then you have your feds. So I'm giving you the breakdown on how I did it federally with the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. But it's the same blueprint. It's the same blueprint. One thing I learned is, folks, you need to prepare for the long haul. The legislative process is long and it's exhausting. It is anxiety riddled. It will depress you. It will defeat you. It will put you on your knees. You will ask questions on the whys. Why? Why does it take so long to get something so simple done? Well, acts of Congress, again, the wheels of justice move very, very, very slow. And you also got to understand, too, that any bill that is actually formally introduced in Congress will always be political. Even veteran bills, they will politicize that bill. So you also need to be up on your current events. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Current events, they matter. Because if you strategize this correctly, you can use it to your advantage. Because that's what these politicians do. If something is in the news that has anything to do with maybe the proposal that you want to see happen, and in your solution on creating your bill, that would be a good time to expose it, boom, to the media and say, look, this problem's going on right now. And look, I have the solution right here for it. And that's how you can get more, more exposure and begin to build that voice. I didn't have a voice. I had no voice. Literally, I had to create my own voice. I didn't have a congressman, so I became my own. I just didn't come with a paycheck. Folks, you have to prepare to travel to Washington, D.C. I went 5 times. And how did I get there? Simple fundraisers, challenge coins, 20, 25 bucks a pop for a challenge coin. And if you want your voice to be heard, you need to have an effective way to lobby yourself. You need to learn how to effectively communicate. And anybody can do this. You want to know why? Because I did it. I'm a marine landscaper. I'm not very educated. Again, I had purpose, I had a plan, and I was very passionate about what I was wanting to do. And when I set out on this mission, I promised myself that I would see it all the way through. So when you make promises like that, you have to keep those promises. And when you keep those promises, it creates this accountability tracker inside your body to where you cannot fail. You can fall down and brush yourself up, but you got to get back up and get back in the fight. Lobbying is the most important thing. Now, I didn't have any lobby dollars behind me. So what did I do? I was an entrepreneur before I got hurt. So I went to the very people that I used to have my print done at, my business cards, all my stationery and all my folders for my custom landscape company. And I said, this is my plan. Here's my bill. Here is exactly how I'm going to change this law. But I need help. I need to look like I'm a lobbyist. I need to go in there. I need to dress up. I need to show up. And I need to act the part. If you go in there with lined paper and Post-it notes, they're not going to take you serious. They're not going to take you serious. They're going to laugh at you. How do I get a meeting? Emails, calls. 5,000 of them, to be exact. 5,000. So when I went into my meeting, what did that look like? Well, it looked like this. I had made custom folders. Okay. And you open up the folder and there's a place to put a bunch of information. I had strategized the outcomes of every single meeting that I did. Prior to all of my 5 trips, I would spend a month before each trip setting appointments. So I would have an appointment every 30 minutes, every 30 minutes, every 30 minutes. And I would meet 40 to 50 members of Congress in 1 week, times 5 times. And I would strategize between what building I was going to be in here, what building. So it was all, again, it was strategy. It was, how am I going to get the most out of my time here? Pre-written letters. Okay. Pre-written letters. Identify the problem. Create the solution. and deliver it in a way that makes sense to the member of Congress and the staffer that you're going to be speaking to. This is something else I would always bring into my meetings. It's simple, it's concise, it's short, it's visual. It makes sense to them. It's something, and it's thick. It's thick and it looks good. And it looks like I've got all these lobbying dollars behind me when I actually don't. It's just citizen advocacy, but it's using your assets. Remember when I said assets? That's the people that I went to and said, hey, I need help. I can't do this alone. So you keep those assets close, okay? Because these are the folks that are going to help this whole entire process, because it's a long and tiring process. What else do you do? Well, after I have bills introduced, I create some very nice flyers, okay? Because when people are pitching bills to members of Congress, this is what they're going to keep on their desk. They're not going to keep the Post-it note of Diane who came in that had a great idea but didn't have any vehicle to effectively put it in, and didn't have that passion and that purpose and that plan to see it through. Here's another one of another bill that I had introduced. And these are all different bills. This is the Brian Talley VA Medical Care and Liability Improvement Act. This is the Brian Talley VA Employment Transparency Act. I wrote 4 bills in Congress. And not only did I write the bills, but after each one of the members of Congress, right before they formally introduced these bills on the House floor, the professional staffers would call me to make sure that I approved of the changes. So it was as if I had professional staffers working for me, and I would approve all of the changes that would needed to take place. Because another thing you need to understand is that there's compromise. You have to compromise. When I first started this mission, it was like 15 pages long of everything that needed fixed. Well, by the time we got down to law, it was like 5 pages, because they didn't want this and that in there. But that's fine. I have another plan, because I'm going to have more bills introduced in this next Congress to further add on to the veteran rights and protections. But for now, that loophole is closed and veterans are protected from medical malpractice. And that was my mission, and that was my goal from the beginning. But there is still more work that needs to be done. How do you effectively communicate with elected officials? Simple. You take all of your bills in there. Here's HR 3813 that I wrote. Here's Senate Bill 4883. Here's HR 7105, the bill that it would ultimately pass under. And here's HR 4526. All have my name on them. Why? I didn't have a member of Congress again. That is very important. But that's a very unique story. So you actually do have a member of Congress, anybody who's watching this video. So if you want to get a bill, and if you want your voice heard, you're going to need to build a strong relationship with your member of Congress as a constituent and hold them accountable. But you have to do it in an honorable way. How do you do that? You make yourself hard to hate. How did I make myself hard to hate? I killed them with absolute kindness. I bugged the crap out of them every day. I would have set emails that I would make, and I would just start firing them off. I mean, there are some days I would send 100, 200 emails. There were some days I sent more. There's some days I sent less. And when I wasn't doing that, I was making phone calls. And when I wasn't doing that, I was creating content on my social media page. When I wasn't doing that, I was tagging members of Congress on Twitter and giving them little snippets of this loophole that needed to be fixed. I was always fully engaged. I wasn't in this to waste my time. This was not a fun job. I didn't choose this job, it chose me. And that's real. It wasn't fun. but it would end up defining who I am now as a man and as a person and how I move forward after an injury, especially an injury that was due to no fault of my own that stripped me of my livelihood and my right to due process. So it couldn't happen again. So I made myself hard to hate. How do I do that? I'm so nice to them. I was this bubbly guy. I would leave great emails. I would make them feel good. I would call and, and I wouldn't really talk about the bills a lot. I would talk about how their weekend was. Do you have any plans this weekend? And I approached this in a nonpartisan way. I never showed what political side of the aisle I was on, not even one time. Not even one time. And I sat down with anybody and everybody who would want to sit down with me. It didn't matter if they were Democrat, if they were liberal, if they were conservative, if they were a Republican. It didn't matter. Because the veteran population is 20.2 million American veterans. And they're not all Republicans. And they're not all liberals. And they're not all Democrats. And they're not all conservatives. So I was in there representing every piece of fabric of America that has ever served our nation. So again, there was no reason to get political here. And if you have a bill that you want done and you get political, they will turn you off. Sorry, you're done here. If you're a citizen advocate, you got to go in nonpartisan. You have got to identify a problem, and then you need to create the solution. That is what's going to get you the meetings with the people that can help you. How do I follow up? Well, after you've had all your meetings and you've got all your great information here, right? You got all your great information here. You got all your lobby stuff. You got all your documentation. You're leaving it with all the members of Congress. You give it a week and you write a nice letter. How did I do that? I went and I got some nice cards made that have the tally bill on it that says, "Thank you so much for meeting with me." And then I would personally sign it. And I would put a business card in there. And if I had any challenge coins left, I would put a challenge coin in there because now they could see it. They can hold it. They could feel it. So now they're going to be looking at it even further. You have to make yourself stand out because there are millions of lobbyists in there, but they've got big money. So when a guy like me is going in there who has no lobbying dollars, they're not going to give me a lot of their time. You're looking 3 to 5 minutes for a meeting. And less you get them in that first 3 minutes, it could go an hour. It can go 30 minutes. But if you don't get them within the first 3 minutes, you're going to be saying goodbye in 5. But you still got to follow up with those people. Because maybe you didn't have your best 3-minute speech. But you still got to follow up. You still got to send the cards. You still got to send the emails. And folks, you're going to get ignored. They will not write you back. They will not call you back. But the ones that do are the ones that you really need to keep close to you and to build those relationships. Folks, I've built relationships with professional staffers in Washington, D.C. Still to this day. I've built relationships with folks like Mark Meadows and Mike Levin. I've built relationships with folks like there's just so many, Senator Tillis and Blumenthal, and they're not personal relationships, but they're professional relationships. I mean, I had over 50 members of Congress that signed on to all my bills. So, that's a lot, like Mark Takano as well. I mean, he was the chairman of the VA committee. You have to go after the decision makers. You have to go after the guys that can make all of the difference in the world. Julia Brownlee, she was in charge of one of the health subcommittees. I had to go to her all the time. So it's a way on how you effectively communicate. It's how you follow up. It's how they remember your name. And they will remember your name if you go in there squared away, folks. And you also have to understand, this is an obsession. It's an obsession. If you want to get a bill passed in Congress, it's something you need to work on every single day. I put 11,000 hours of my own advocacy time into this for the good of the country, because this law was fraudulent, it was criminal, it was egregious, and it should never happen, especially to the veteran community, a vulnerable and at-risk community. So again, my mission and my goal, again, from the very beginning, it's the purpose, it's the passion, it's the plan, it's the obsession, it's the killing them with kindness, it's lobbying, it's being heard, it's being clear, concise, short, in and out. And you also need to be a guy that's ready to switch gears at any minute. I had some of my best meetings in elevators with other members of Congress. Hey, Congressman, how you doing? I'm Brian Talley. Hey, I got a bill right here for you. Boom. Please sign on. I have, this is a bipartisan bill. I've got Takano, I've got Levin, I've got Meadows, and I've got, Rep Calvert, and we're ready to get this bill across the finish line. I've got a hearing coming up soon. Please sign on. And then 2 days later, boop, he signs on. 3 minutes. That's what it takes. It takes starting that conversation. Create a dialogue. Introduce yourself. And I was doing this in tremendous pain, anxiety, and pain pills. My brother John would go out there. My Marine brother John, he would go out there as my support guy, as my emotional support animal, and he would hump a chair, and I would have to sit down, because it took so much out of me. It took so much out. It still does to this day. But these are the questions I get. And I've been responding to these questions in the same way I'm responding right now. But I can use this podcast now, and I can just send it out to everybody, because this is valuable information. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a professional advocate. I'm just a regular guy that stood up in the face of a horrifying injustice, and I made a change. So what I'm telling you works, and it's my blueprint, but it may not be the blueprint for somebody else. Again, I'm telling you what I did and what worked for me. How do I have my voice heard? They're never going to listen to me. Again, it's killing them with kindness. It's showing up in their office. You got to dress up. You got to show up, because the emails and the phone calls are great, but you're going to get tossed in piles. Do you know how many people call their elected officials every single day and leave voicemails? Do you know how many of those voicemails are actually written down? If you get 100 calls, they may write down 3. And do you know how many the actual member of Congress are going to get? Maybe one of those 100 that are screened through about 3 layers of staffers. Because the staffers can answer all the questions for the constituents. Out of those 100, you're going to get 1 that goes directly to the member of Congress. And then he'll probably look at it, or she'll probably look at it and just refer it off to the professional staffer. So that's how this stuff works, guys. So they don't want a 20-minute voicemail, because it's just going to get deleted. It's just going to get deleted. But how do you have your voice heard? Show up in their office. Hey, can I get 2 minutes with the congressman, or 2 minutes with the congresswoman? Can I get 2 minutes with the senator? Going to where they eat. Business after hours. Show up, dress up, put your hand out, create a dialogue, friendly, fight honorably. We've seen so much stuff in our country of injustice, but so many people have fought the injustice in wrong ways. If you want positive change, and you really want to be heard, and you want to be effective, and you believe passionately about what you want to change, you need to fight honorably. You need to fight honorably, because if you don't, they will turn you off. And once you're turned off, you no longer have a voice. And once they turn you off, you've lost all your credibility. And the most important thing in Congress is having credibility. If you don't have credibility, you have nothing. You have nothing. I've already kind of touched on this, following through. After every single meeting, I'm typing up a quick letter, and I'm putting it in a card, and I'm sending it off immediately. So when they get that, they're going to open it up and they're going to say, man, he seems to be on his stuff. He brought in some really, really good material here, some really good content. He's following up with a really nice handwritten letter. He's been in my office. He's coming from California. He's in DC, and he's not in the best of health. I think I'm going to give this guy a little bit of my time. I think this guy's onto something here. You have to follow through constantly because these guys are hit with a million things every single day. And how do you stay in front of them? How do you remain relevant? Again, it's the boots on the ground. It's doing the work. It's the emails, it's the calls, and it's having your team, because you have your team now that could put out 1,000 calls a week. And instead of you doing it over the course of, 2 months, I mean, it takes a long time to make a phone call, because you got to go through the call screener, and then they're going to send you to the legislative, staffer. And then from there, you'll go to the legislative director. And if you move your way up, you'll go to the professional staffer. And if you move your way up from there, you're going to go to the scheduler. And if you move your way up there, you're going to go to the actual member of Congress. So it takes about 5 different steps to get to the point where you need to get to. And I had established well over 300 of these. 300 to get 4 bills. 3 bills that were formally introduced in Congress. So folks, it can be done. And the cards were completely stacked against me here. I did not have a congressman. You can't make this stuff up. My congressman was Duncan Hunter. He got indicted on federal charges early on in his re-election campaign, and Gavin Newsom would not hold a special election because it was a Republican seat, one of the few in California. So that seat would sit vacant for nearly 2 years. And at the time, I had the biggest case in the VA with no voice. So I created my own voice. Again, how? Grassroots. You have to have the passion behind it. Yeah, and folks, this is easy to do. It's easy to do it, but it's time consuming, and it is very frustrating, and it's exhausting. And like the blueprint's easy, but the work is hard, is what I should say. It's very hard work, but the blueprint is easy to follow. It's like, oh, make a phone call? Well, that's easy. Make an email? Well, that's easy. Oh, make print? Well, that's easy, right? But now you got to present it. But now you got to work it. Now you need to be influential when you have your seat at the table. Once you have your seat at the table, that's your time to shine. That's your 3 to 5 minutes. And if you don't shine at that table, better luck next time. Well, it's a good thing we have all these other members of Congress to go try, because maybe you screwed up there, but your next meeting will be good. Kill them with kindness. Again, have them remember your name. And when they hear your name, you want them to say, that's a good guy, or that's a good girl right there. That's a good man. That's a good woman. I want to help them. I believe in their plan. I believe in their mission. I think they have great solutions. And members of Congress are always looking for bills. They're always looking for bills. And as a constituent, again, it's your duty as an American to step up. And if there's an issue, create it. Go in there and say, problem, solution. And guess what? It's election season. So members of Congress are always looking for neat ways to let their constituents know that this is what they're doing right now. So again, it's always going to be politicized, but that's just how citizen advocacy works. Guys, the most important thing here is do not lose your bearing. You will have moments of frustration and discouragement, but you cannot lose yourself. And this is where I was effective. I was angry. so angry, but I could not show it. I was angry for years, but I would just take that anger. I would go in my room and I would pray about it. And I'm like, I just can't believe this, because you get ignored. You get ignored. You get ignored by so many people. And then you start to think, it's like, God, dude, this is such an easy fix. Why? Why is it so hard? But you have to just keep faith, and you have to trust the process, because the process is designed against, it's stacked against you. It really is. It is stacked against you. And if you go in knowing that, you're going to be that much of an effective voice, an effective leader. Again, guys, this is influencing members of Congress to come to the table with your solution after you've identified the problem and created the solution. Now, once you have that meeting, again, that 3 to 5 minutes, that's all you get. And if they like what you're saying, they'll give you 10, and then you'll get 20, and then you'll get 30. And then the neatest thing will happen when Congressman Mark Meadows said, cancel my next 2 appointments. Well, once I earned my seat at that table, I never gave up my seat until my mission was complete. And once you begin to build that credibility, and you begin these assets in Washington, and you begin to create this meaningful content that everybody can understand, and to stay on the same script, short and concise, you will be successful in this advocacy world. You will be successful. But again, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of work. It takes a grassroots effort. It takes making yourself look bigger than you actually are. It's creating your own voice. There's so many people out there that have great ideas, but they don't want to do the work. But if they don't do the work, the job ain't going to get done. Nobody's going to come save you. And there's so many people out there that reach out all the time. Oh my God. And then they send me all these problems and stuff. Who did I have to reach out to when I was going through my most miserable time? Some friends and family. But I was, you can't just contact a guy and say, do this for me. You've got to learn how to build your own voice. You've got to learn how to design your own blueprint. And once you design that blueprint and it starts to work and you see it start to have good results, well, stick with it. Stick with it. But this process was 3 years. I was blessed to have 4 bills introduced in Congress. And then I was also blessed enough to have it pass and become law on January 5th of 2021. So I've been down the advocacy world. I've been down that road. And again, it is all on how you carry yourself, on how you act. Again, presentation is everything. Lobbying, strategizing the outcomes before they happen. Again, you're playing chess here. You're playing chess. So you need to play accordingly. So that's forecasting months down the road. Okay, so this just happened right now in the media. So I know right now they're focused on this. So if I could take one little piece from that major news story that's going on right now, how can I contact the media to tie my story into this to get some attention? Because that's what you need. You need to build exposure. If you build exposure, now you have the media calling the members of Congress. And when the media calls the members of Congress, they answer the phone because they do not want bad publicity. And that's why the scheduler and the public affairs people who work for these members of Congress have very important jobs and they have very important roles. But again, if you're going to be a citizen advocate that's going to go in there and raise your voice, that is going to lose their bearing. That is going to become a very easy person to not want around your office. They will turn you off. They will block your emails and they will not take your calls. And it doesn't matter if you're a constituent or not, because they will say that you are, you know, that you're unreasonable, and say, no, we're not going to talk to you. So I hope this makes sense, guys. I mean, like I said, I mean, this isn't planned. I'm just going through some of the steps that I did when I was working in Congress. Again, just as a regular guy, who saw a major problem and just brought his own solution to the table, guys. That's all this is. And again, anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. So happy advocating, guys. And just remember one thing: if you believe in something, do it. If it scares you, do it. It takes a lot of courage to take on the government. It takes a lot of courage to show up in DC and fight for what you believe is right. But to do it in a way that makes sense. Again, to put it in a vehicle to get you from the starting line to the finish line. And that's the journey here. And that's the learning process. That's the educational process. That's acquiring knowledge. That's doing tremendous research. That's taking crazy notes. It's talking to people, building relationships, all the stuff that I said before. How do I write a bill? Purpose, passion, and a plan. Establish your assets, strategize the outcome before it happens. Identify the problem, create a solution. Citizen advocacy, anyone can do it. Create a grassroots coalition, create a team. Keep that team motivated, keep that team inspired. Prepare for the long haul. The legislative process is exhausting. Lobby, create your own content. Keep it short, concise, to the point. You have 3 to 5 minutes to pitch your bill. How do I get meetings? Phone calls, emails, and show up. Show up. How do I effectively communicate with my elected officials? I've kind of already explained that. Kill them with kindness. Just be you. Be a good-hearted, sincere, and genuine person, and they will listen to you. Make yourself hard to hate. Man, that guy's bugging me so much, but he's a nice guy. I want to help him. Follow up, get some nice cards. Send some cards. Send thank you letters. I really enjoyed our time together. Call them by their name. Their first name. Create that relationship. And again, it's not always talking business. Ask them how their son's soccer game was. Hey, how was the event you went to in DC the other night? Was that fun? Tell me about it. Oh, wow, that's cool. Oh, wow, you had ahi tuna. Oh, wow, I really like that too. You know what? I've been on some fishing trips. Find that commonality. Make friends with them. How do I have my voice heard? The same way I've been talking. Fight honorably. Do not go in there and embarrass yourself. Do not go in there and embarrass your family name. Follow through. That's the hard part. That's staying on top of it and remaining in front of them. This is remaining relevant. Again, this is the most important. Kill them with kindness. Kill them with kindness. Kill them with kindness, because they are getting hit in every direction. You need to stand out. You need to stand out. And that's where your content and how you dress and how you present yourself and how you speak is how they're going to remember you. Do not lose your bearing. You cannot show frustration. It's like a pitcher, a major league pitcher, or really any pitcher. You're doing great and you're striking everybody out and you're in the zone and man, you've got it going. And then there's the pitcher that gets in there in the first inning and gets lit. He's already got 6 runs up, bases are loaded, got 1 out. they've already hit around they're starting to hit around for the second time. And that pitcher starts to show emotion, and it's negative emotion. After every pitch, he's hitting his glove on his leg, and he's angry, and he's taking that walk around the mound, and he's shaking his head, and he picks up the rosin bag, and he's just mad, and he's letting out this negative emotion. Congress picks up on that too, and so do their staffers. If you go in there and if in any way you show that negative emotion, the hitters are going to know, and they're going to jump all over you on that, because now you're not going to be mentally prepared for the game, because that's what this is, folks. It's a game. It's a game. It's a game. So if you don't show, if you keep your composure and you don't show that frustration, you'll be fine. You cannot show your emotion. And this is why I was effective in Congress. I never talked about Brian Talley. I talked about 20.2 million American veterans being at risk. I spoke in third person. It wasn't about my story. It was creating a solution to a problem and staying on that mission from start to finish and not changing it. Once I started it, I didn't change anything. The bill and the mission remained the same, to close the loophole. Okay, so guys, hope this makes sense. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. I do my best at trying to get everybody taken care of. But again, when I'm hit with 300 emails a month, it just makes things really hard. And again, this is something that I get asked a lot. So why not try to help, guys? And if anybody's ever looking for a speaker, or if anybody's ever looking for a man to come in to hold a class or some sort of forum, or how to read and write legislation, and some tips and tricks that we haven't discussed here, feel free to reach out at thetallybill@gmail.com. That's thetallybill@gmail.com, and I'd be more than happy to come speak to your people. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a speaker on resilience and perseverance and hardship and overcoming adversities, as well as advocacy coaching. And so, guys, give me a shot. If you're having an event, please reach out to me. Until next time, for Tuesdays with Tally, this is Brian Tally. Good night, Semper Fi, and God bless.